good service, good results. I was able to sort of deliver those type of results functionally with insurance patients first, build relationships, develop relationships with referring doctors, build on that trust and reputation. And that's how the cosmetic practice really grew.
Hello and welcome to Beauty and the Biz, where we talk about the business and marketing side of plastic surgery. I'm your host, Catherine Maley, author of Your Aesthetic Practice, What Your Patients Are Saying, as well as consultant to plastic surgeons to get them more patients and more profits. Now, today's special guest is Dr. Gregory Lewen. He's a board-certified ocular plastic surgeon who specializes exclusively in cosmetic and reconstructive surgery of the eyes and mid to lower face. He's been in private practice located in Aventura, Florida for the past 15 years. Now, Dr. Lewen attended Chicago Medical School and completed his residency at North Shore, Long Island Jewish Health System Department of Ophthalmology in New York. He then did 2 fellowships in both cosmetic and reconstructive oculofacial plastic surgery at the University of Texas Health Science Center, as well as the Ophthalmic Plastic Surgeons of Texas. Now, Dr. Lewen is a fellow of the American Academy of Cosmetic Surgery and American College of Surgeons, as well as an active member of the American Academy of Ophthalmology and board certified by the AVO. Dr. Lewen, welcome to Beauty and the Biz. It's a pleasure to finally have you on.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So why ophthalmology and not some other specialty?
Why ophthalmology? Actually, my initial interests were in neuroscience and ear, nose, and throat. And I actually had interest in doing facial plastic surgery from the beginning. When I was doing my rotations as a medical student, I was rotating at shock trauma in downtown Baltimore. A lot of trauma, and we were doing a lot of head and neck, like smoking related cancer surgeries, and I just decided it wasn't for me. Mm-hmm. So I switched to ophthalmology actually like a couple of weeks before the match, and realized when I started doing ophthalmology that I didn't quite love ophthalmology either until I found my field, oculoplastic. So I kind of came back in a circle around to facial plastic surgery, where I belonged from the first place.
Gotcha. What I find so interesting about your journey is you did 2 fellowships that were very, very different. One was university setting, and another one was it a private multi-physician practice? Can you just describe that, and how beneficial was it for you to see that from 2 different perspectives?
Sure. So my primary fellowship was at the University of Texas in Houston. We did trauma and cancer and, lots of functional stuff at the university, obviously. But I also worked at the same time. I was working in a private practice. It was a solo private practice, although the oculoplastic surgeon who trained me there, his sister was a cosmetic derm. Mm-hmm. So she actually was competent in a lot of the dermatologic lasers, treatments, skincare. I learned a lot of the inner workings of private practice, a lot of the administrative sort of backside of it. Not as much of the marketing, but I kind of learned how to put it all together and, communicate with patients about different services that you offer, how to kind of make the transition from doing pure functional work into doing a little bit more cosmetic work. I learned a lot about the service, the customer service sort of aspect that's really imperative in this field, and then how to kind of pull it together. And I think that certainly made it easier for me to make the decision to transition into my own private practice eventually.
But did you go straight from fellowship to setting up shop on your own?
I did not, actually. I worked for 2 group practices. Previous, they were multi-subspecialty, like ophthalmology practices. One was primarily a LASIK practice. One was primarily a cataract practice, but they all had different subspecialties within ophthalmology. And in both offices, I was essentially starting up the oculoplastic surgery sort of aspect of the practice. So my first job out of fellowship, I remember I gave them a whole bunch of instruments and equipment and supplies and things that I needed to set up shop and protocols and consent forms. And I got in the first day and they said, okay, well, set it up. I had to call the vendors myself. I had to set up the meetings myself. I had to go out and market myself. They were essentially like supporting me through that process financially and administratively, but it was sort of like a crash course on starting a practice, essentially.
So, given all of those experiences that you had, what then made you decide, okay, I'm ready for solo practice?
I think I when I worked with the 2 group practices, I found that while I was happy with certain things, I found that I was doing a lot of the work to kind of set things up myself. One practice, I felt like I needed a little bit more administrative support. Their focus was some of the other specialties that they had brought in. And then I transitioned to another practice that had, kind of promised more administrative support. And it was a little bit too much. I felt kind of shackled by it and not really able to, do the things that I felt like I wanted to do. And I think after that point, I looked for other opportunities. I kind of decided geographically where I wanted to be, which was a whole process as well. And once I had made those decisions that, I kind of knew where I wanted to be, I didn't quite, see the opportunities available, already for me. I decided I have to create my own opportunity, and that's how I kind of went about things.
I've noticed it's the indecision that will keep you up at night. It's almost like once you finally decide, I'm going to do this, it gives you a lot more clarity, because now you do need to make some decisions. But gosh, just making that decision, I think is that the tough part, like getting over that hump of saying, I'm really going to do this?
It was. And I think a lot of it is also like going through the process. So, I mean, I would say probably from my discussions with people, I don't think as many people starting medical businesses go about with sort of the traditional business plan, mission statement, vision statement. I think a lot of people just jump into it. I kind of started doing those things early on. I wrote an entire business plan out before I sent an application and applied for business funding and went looking for spaces and all that. So I kind of I had detailed sort of like, even though not all of it was exactly how things materialized, it definitely evolved over time. I think something changes when you put your ideas down on paper and you kind of spell it all out. It becomes tangible, it becomes real, and you kind of get forced in a place where you realize like there is no turning back. You just have to move forward and make it work, and there's no other option.
So let's talk about location, because you picked Aventura. And for those who don't know, it is an extremely high-end, affluent area in Miami. It's absolutely gorgeous there. How did that decision happen?
So I actually, as part of my business planning, I did really a full-on market analysis, kind of like mapped out where everybody else that was in my specialty, and also facial plastics, plastic surgery, anybody that I thought might be doing some of the similar like procedures to me, with really focus on obviously the surgical stuff that I knew I wanted to, build. And as I did that, I also kind of mapped out like where the high end retail was located, which I find, these companies are much smarter than I am with regard to like knowing where to establish themselves, knowing where like the higher rent districts are, where, higher per capita income, that kind of stuff. And so I kind of cross-referenced a lot of those things. And as I put things together, you have to make decisions about like, I want to be in a certain area. So for me, I knew I didn't want to be in South Miami, for example. It's lovely there, but I just felt like it wasn't exactly like the type of area that I wanted to be in. So I was looking for something more on the northern side of town, and you kind of condense from there. And with that, I realized there was an opportunity. So
wow, yeah. So are you renting, leasing, buying? Or what's your situation?
I'm renting. I actually just this week signed an extension for my office. I'm expanding into the space next door. I thought about purchasing a building and building it out, but I'm not quite ready for that yet. I think that's probably the next step for me. Yeah.
Do you have your own OR suite?
I do not. I do a good number of my surgeries. I would say 40 to 50% like in office in a procedure room. But it's not, I don't do IV anesthesia. I don't do general anesthesia here. It's really just oral sedation, local, whatever we can do in the office, Pronox, that kind of stuff.
Gotcha. Regarding the functional, what percentage of your revenues are functional versus cosmetic?
When I started or now?
Both.
When I started, I would say most of my revenue came from functional work. And really, that's how I built my practice. I think the cosmetic stuff, when you're just starting out, also, you're a fresh face. You've got a little bit of a doe-eyed look, a little bit naive to how the world and the business world works. And I think patients, customers kind of read some of that. So, when people are paying cash for procedures, it's about trust, it's about confidence, and it's about how you come across, being able to deliver results along those two lines. And I think that comes from good service, good results. I was able to kind of sort of deliver those type of results functionally with insurance patients first, build relationships, develop relationships with referring doctors, build on that trust and reputation. And that's how the cosmetic practice really grew. We haven't taken any insurance since 2020. We don't accept new insurance patients. So I'm 100% cash at this point. I do see some functional patients, but they understand from the beginning that it's not going to be billed through insurance at all.
Oh, good. That's good for you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. How difficult was that to finally, because most surgeons get there, like they're just so fed up, to wait till you were just done. And then
at the beginning, I did it more kind of understanding that most of the insurance plans that I was on, I was going to essentially do it like a loss leader. Like I knew I wasn't going to make money. If I broke even, that was going to be considered like a win. I just my private office and the way that I wanted to, I saw high volume patients, 50, 60 patients in a session, half day, like in residency. And I never wanted to do that kind of work again. I just don't think you can really provide quality service when you're doing that kind of volume. It works for some people. It just wasn't my speed. So, when I started getting up in volume, what I started doing is starting to cut off the insurance company and plans that I realized weren't paying me, and I was really getting a loss on it, or it was too much work administratively going for referrals and authorizations and that kind of stuff. And I got to a place, for the last few years that I was taking insurance, I was just doing a few PPOs and Medicare, and I just kind of started, again, eliminating those as I felt like I was ready. I think it's a leap of faith when you do it. It's scary because you feel like, well, am I going to make it like this? What happens if I have to go back? I think Medicare tries to scare you with the whole, you can't come back for 2 years type thing. But you really just have to kind of have faith that you're doing things the right way. I think it helps to build up enough of a non-surgical practice also, so that you can fall back a little bit on that. I did use that a lot at the beginning of my transition to kind of help soften the transition, and it definitely made the process easier. And then it's just really about, again, taking good care of people, making sure that you're getting those referrals from other people who you've cared for, because that the word of mouth stuff is really invaluable.
The smartest practices know a big part of their practice growth comes from retention, referrals, and repeat treatments, not just from new internet stranger leads. That's why I created the KISS Loyalty Club, a done-for-you system that keeps your patients returning, referring, reviewing, sharing you on social media, and completing surgery. Discover how KISS can grow your own practice revenues by visiting kissloyalty.com today.
I would think the non-surgical part of your practice is instrumental in keeping things going, because that'll give you the kind of the predictable revenues. And will they go up and down that ladder? Will somebody come to you for Botox and then move to a bleph and then come back down for lasers?
They do. They frequently do. I think for a long time, that was how, again, a lot of the cosmetic patients were coming. Or it would be like, again, when I started, like, well, I treated them for like a sty functionally. And then I did Botox, and then we did some lasers, and then they needed a bleph, and, and so on. But I think because I don't do as many different areas surgically, when they need something like, well, I want my nose done, or I might want my neck done, or I want to get my breast redone, or whatever, a lot of those patients I'm referring out. So I've always kind of had good relationships with other doctors to be able to refer patients out as well. And I think that reciprocity kind of helps your reputation in the community as well.
Yeah. And so can you still live off of a lot of physician referrals on the cosmetic side?
Most of the referrals that I get are not coming from physician at this point, and they're I would say less commonly coming from up the ladder from non-surgical treatments. Some and some people kind of want to like start with something like that, but a lot of the referrals I get at this point are primary for surgery, from marketing outreach, from word of mouth, from what they see on the internet and Google searches and Instagram and everything else.
Gotcha. What about staff? Because you have to take some staff, especially if you're doing non-surgical. Or do you have an injector? Or are you doing that yourself? Or what's your practice made up of?
So I still do injections myself. I enjoy them. Some surgeons don't enjoy it. So I don't see myself, walking away from it and never saying like, I don't want to do any of it. But I do have an injector who does more sort of like the day-to-day stuff for me, specifically as it relates to, so in this area around the eyes, you'd be surprised how many people that had come to see me for surgery have had filler in the lower lid and the cheek area. And so I tell, patients when I meet them, the most common filler that we inject here, or the thing that we inject, is actually the dissolving enzyme to get rid of the filler, especially for pre-surgical patients. So we do a lot of ultrasound. We do a lot of dissolving here. It's part of that non-surgical part of the practice, but every day we're doing that stuff. Because they've been overfilled? It's not even necessarily that they've been overfilled. I certainly, again, you can imagine in South Florida, there's certainly, a handful of those. But if you want to have surgery in an area, I strongly believe you should not have filler in that area at the time that you're having surgery, because it attracts water, it's pro-inflammatory, and you can wind up distorting your results. And that, unfortunately, is something I've seen when I see a lot of revision cases coming to see me with people who had filler that wasn't dissolved, and then it gets dissolved, and then they see stuff that they don't want to see, or it doesn't look right, or, whatever. Gotcha. What would you say is the biggest challenge of running a solo practice? Biggest challenge. I'd say my biggest asset, and the hardest part of my job, is dealing with people, and that includes the HR part. I would say hands down. I love my staff; they're amazing. But that is the hardest part of running a practice. Absolutely. How about a business mistake you made that would be helpful for others to avoid? Business mistakes. I think general mistakes. Everybody makes some. You try to make less than people have made before you. I think when it comes to things like HR, the sort of the old adage, like hire slow, fire quick type thing. I think when I've been less apt to do that, usually I get bit in the rear with, something of that nature. Thankfully, I don't think I've made earth-shattering mistakes with regard to like reputation and stuff. I intentionally didn't take the shortcuts with things like Groupon, for example, was at the doorstep when I started, and, offering us a whole lot of deals on this and that and whatever. And a number of other sort of marketing channels, I think, that would have enabled me to grow volume quicker. I had offers to work in other offices when I first started. And I really kind of like said, like, my goal is to build my private practice. So I don't know that that really aligns with what I'm trying to do. I think maybe my biggest mistake is that I didn't make more mistakes on somebody else's dime before I started up.
That's a good
You
point.
know, I always feel like there was more to learn. You know, you think you know it all when you're starting, but you realize really quickly that you don't. Keeping overhead as low as you can at the beginning so that you don't overextend yourself, because you don't realize how quickly you burn through working capital.
Mhm.
You know, some of those type things I think were probably my biggest mistakes.
So let's talk about scaling. You just mentioned that you're going to grow. You took another suite. It sounds like you're more
Mhm.
space in your building. Is there any plan to bring on another specialty?
Yeah, so I mean, I have a kind of unique circumstance because my wife is a dentist. She's been part time for the last few years. We have two young children, but she does a lot of the HR stuff for my office. So you can imagine she spends more time here than she planned to initially. So we're building out a space that we can dual fit a number of the rooms, so she can do some dentistry here as well, and build, like, her own practice. Um, so I think that's the immediate specialty that will be joining me, and obviously the nurse practitioner PA that like continues to do non-surgical treatments in my office. Long term, I can certainly see myself bringing in another oculoplastic, facial plastic, plastic surgeon. I think depending on kind of where we are at the time that I feel like we're ready for that.
Mhm. So let's talk about the marketing side then. How are you differentiating yourself? The part that kind of muddies the water for me is typically an ocular facial plastic surgeon is typically, I think, insurance. And then I think, oh, but he's cash only. So I think, well, then who would go to you? Because everyone wants to give you your insurance card when they're, so how do you work that out and how do you differentiate?
I mean, well, we established that, from the beginning, from the first phone call or interaction, online with patients, that we don't accept insurance. So if they're looking for something along those lines, no hard feelings. And, I'll give them names of other people that I know work with insurance plans, but that's just not the type of office that we are. We run intentionally as more concierge boutique. Kind of establishing that from the beginning. Again, I think typically where we're trying to differentiate ourselves is, I think there's a lot of surgeons who do eyelid surgery in various specialties, and some of them are exceptional at what they do. But what I see in my practice, especially when it comes to consultations for revisions and people who aren't happy with primary surgery, is that how you were trained to do a blepharoplasty, whether that was 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years ago, blepharoplasty has evolved a lot in the last 20 years, since I've been in training as well. Classically, this was about subtraction. Like, we take out skin, we take out fat, and we, make things more rejuvenated. But actually, what I find is when I look at photos of my own cases from when I first came out of training, they didn't have skin and they didn't have fat, but did patients truly look more youthful, energetic, refreshed? Questionable. And a lot of that is because, without the skin kind of blocking the way in the upper lid, you see more of the hollows in the upper lid. The hollows are the shape of the bone. That creates dark shadows. That makes people's eyes look darker. It takes the life away from the eyes as opposed to adding it to the eyes. So I find that for the last really 10 years, my surgeries have been more about restorative type surgery. How to conserve volume, how to replace volume, not just taking things away. Or if you are taking something away, finding the balance so that you can restore that sort of natural aesthetic and keep people looking like themselves, not overdone, which I think is certainly more of the trend of what we see, these days. So does every specialty that does blepharoplasty have the same vision about this and the same approach? I don't know. I don't think so, because I find that sometimes even my own specialty, people don't have the same vision and approach. So I think you have to put out work that you feel represents, your best efforts to like create a better aesthetic for people and actually truly make them look more refreshed and keep them looking natural. And I think when you do that and you do good work and you take good care of people, the word gets out and you become known for the things you do best.
If you can get that on video, because that would take consumer education. Here's what we know as consumers, just looking out in the world. When Kenny, what's his name? Kenny Rogers, the singer, and he had that awful, whatever he had done, brow lift, and like Nancy Pelosi out here in California, she looks ridiculous. Her eyebrows are way up too high, If that's how we see it and we say, oh, you mean it doesn't have to be like that, because you really know what you're doing with eyes. Like, I just think as a differentiator, boy, I'd much rather go to somebody like you for eyes than the general, I do everything,
Yeah. I agree. And that's how we position it. And again, it's not to take away from the people that do good work, because there always are, people in other specialties who do so, but I just have a different sort of approach to the eyes. And certainly, again, as a specialist, when you're the one that's fixing the complications from eyelid issues and procedures that were done where people aren't happy, like you have a different view of what's best for people long term, not just in the short term.
Yeah. Different view, pun intended. Regarding marketing, how do you go about finding patients?
So when I first started, what I did the most actually was grassroots. Like I went, as I said, I kind of mapped out where all potential referral sources were. Optometrists, ophthalmologists, dermatologists, plastic surgeons, like other oculoplastic surgeons. I made it a priority to meet my colleagues, like first and foremost, and let them know that I wanted collegial relationships. I wanted to cross-refer. I wanted to help out. I wanted to cover them if they needed, a second opinion, that kind of thing. And I think it promoted the right type of relationships in the community. And with that, I got a lot of patients, and that's really how my functional and cosmetic practice started. At a certain point, again, we started getting more word of mouth referrals, and we started really kind of working on word of mouth referrals more, getting more reviews and asking for more referrals from current clientele. Google, social media. I use social media. I know some people use social media more for lead generation. I use it more for branding than anything else. I just find that that's what works for me the most. And there's certainly more work to do there, but some people have a knack for social media that just comes natural, and other people have to work at it every day. So,
which one are you?
The latter, for sure.
I'm telling you, some surgeons were just born for social media, and most weren't. It just is. What about any tips on photo consents or getting patients to review you? Any tips on that one?
Yeah. So I mean, I kind of had an epiphany actually a number of years ago when I took my car in for service, and I brought it to the dealership for like whatever the checkup was that was included with the lease. And when I checked out with the service rep, they asked me for a review, but they told me why it was important to them, and they told me like why it was going to help other people. And I think just intuitive, sort of naturally, like we all kind of want to help other people. Mm-hmm. It's work, to do an online review for somebody else, and to speak like, in a public forum, especially when it's something like a plastic surgery type of thing where some people don't necessarily want to be identified or they want to play it low key. So they might be a little bit more sort of, skeptical about putting their name out there in that context. But if you tell them why it's important and you tell them that they're helping other people, I think more people are inclined to help you when you kind of explain to it. But you have to ask. If you don't ask, it's not going to happen. Not to the degree that you want it to.
That was such a big pearl. I don't know if you know this, but there's this book called Persuasion. Yep. And one of the things he says is you have to tell them why. And it doesn't even have to be a big why, just some kind of logical why for people to say, oh, okay. And you have to ask, it's not going to happen naturally anymore. Nothing's happening by accident anymore. It's got to be strategic and heartfelt and the whole thing. And you can't start with customer service at the end. You have to start way at the beginning.
Exactly.
To get
exactly. You have to kind of like set the tone for this from the beginning. Like, if you're happy, we're going to ask you for a review. And then you can follow it up, when you have the happy patient, say, remember, I told you I was going to ask you for the review. It's really important to us. It means so much to us. It really helps other people find us. Like, again, if you position it in a way where like you're encouraging the person, like, and letting them know you're not just like doing us a solid, you're really helping other people.
Yeah.
So
make a good decision. Yeah, I totally agree. So tell me a crazy patient or staff story you care to share.
I'll tell you a crazy staff story.
Great.
I had hired somebody to work at the front desk a number of years ago, who was friendly and had a nice smile and like seemed like bubbly and honest and everything. She worked for me for about 2 weeks and had some issues getting to work on time, and like I would get excuses about traffic, and she lost her keys and couldn't find her phone, or the kid was doing something or whatever. And then the last excuse I got from her was that she was driving to work and she was almost here, and then she had diarrhea and she had to go home and change her clothes. And then she got locked in her house, which I'm not even sure exactly how that happens, but she had to call the fire department to kind of help her unlock the door and get out of her house. And that's why she couldn't come to work the day that she came. So I actually, I told her I just didn't think we were going to be a good fit. We were looking for something else. And about a month after she was terminated, the Miami-Dade Police Department actually came by and started asking questions about her. Apparently, she was had a history of stealing prescription pads from some of the offices that she worked at previously and writing narcotic prescriptions. And I believe she was apprehended for that at some point. So pretty crazy. I'm glad that I followed the adage of fire quick when I kind of had a funny feeling like this isn't right.
That's crazy. Okay, you win for the most crazy lady. Yeah. I'm just glad you took care of it really soon. Oh boy, it would have grown into a bigger problem. For
sure. You got to trust your gut with some of these things.
So tell us something interesting we don't know about you.
Something interesting. When I was in medical school, actually, me and a couple of my friends I was living with at the time, we were, studying all day and night and coming home and, found ourselves kind of like needing to like blow off some steam. We got this great idea that like, each of us was going to buy a record player and we were going to teach ourselves how to DJ, which we did. And actually I did sort of semi-professional stuff like for many years while I was in medical training that paid for my social life, essentially, while I was going through like residency, fellowship, all those years. I worked for corporate for a number of years. I did like some weddings and that kind of stuff. It was fun. Yeah.
You mean like the scratching record thing?
Like the scratching record thing. Yeah.
Oh my God. Good for you. I did not see that coming. You seem like very quiet, conservative person.
Sometimes.
Wow. Good for you. So that could be your side hustle if everything goes, if anything goes wrong.
It's been a few years, but now I mostly listen to like, jazz and classical and that kind of stuff. So
I'm always surprised on Instagram. They'll show those people like in those auditoriums with hundreds of thousands of people there. And they're always scratching these old songs that I grew up with. And I think, well, that's not very, the only reason it's unique is because they're messing with the song that was around for 20 years,
Nowadays, you can scratch on the CD player. Like it's not even a CD player. It plays, MP3s, but it's set up like a CD player. So it's like a digital scratch. You're not actually putting your hands on the vinyl the same way.
Oh, no kidding.
It just doesn't sound the same. There's nothing that really
come a long way. Yeah.
Sounds like vinyl and, and a needle. So
yeah, sounds like what it is.
Yeah.
So we're going to wrap it up now. And your website is lewencosmetic.com. And then your Instagram is Dr. Greg Lewen, right?
Yes.
Any other way to get a hold of you or?
You could email me.
Yeah.
Dr. Lewen, DrLewen at LEWENCOSMETIC.com.
Gotcha. So Dr. Lewen at lewencosmetic.com. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. It has been a pleasure to get to know you better. And everybody, that's going to wrap it up for us today. If you would please subscribe to Beauty in the Biz so I can also increase my audience, that would be truly appreciated. And then if you've got any questions or feedback for me, please leave them on my website at catherinemaley.com, or you can certainly DM me on Instagram at catherinemaley.mba. That's it for us today. Thanks so much, and we'll talk again soon.
The fastest way to success is to model other successful surgeons who have what you want, but you can only see their results, not the path they took to get there. So you continue to jump from one thing to another, hoping to find something that will work for you too. But it rarely does. So try this shortcut instead. It's guaranteed to move you forward. I compiled my intellectual property to grow cosmetic revenues, everything I've gleaned over the years, into one playbook of the most successful practices and what they do to win. Go to cosmeticpracticevault.com and let's grow your cosmetic revenues.